I'm ready to slash and burn.
No border. I am going to be uncomfortable and all over you from start to finish.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Outside of the Box. And you may ask yourself, did I do a Tantrum episode earlier this season? I absolutely did. But I didn't have Aren, and we didn't really talk about Blip. So I feel that we need to have a full Seems Reasonable family episode here. Now, I will add, I am wearing a Blip shirt, but that is only because I cannot wear two shirts at once, and so my Tantrum shirt is elsewhere right now.
We know where your loyalties are at this point. So
Zach, one of our teammates, was wearing Blip with a Tantrum jersey under it and pulled it off at for the last fight.
Yes, so like I have many allegiances, and it varies by the day. But for now, we're going with the Blip love today. But we're going to talk about both robots in some capacity. Probably a little bit more on the Blip side today, since we talked about Tantrum the last time. But I really need to start off with kind of where we ended the last interview, because I think I would be remiss if I didn't do a preview for the Hydra match and not talk about how, now that we can talk about what actually happened, just to kind of get some thoughts on that, because it was absolutely a dominant performance by Tantrum. I was really excited to see it go down that way, and I just have to say that, given the hydraulic fluid leaking, I think it would be fair to say that Hydra got dehydrated.
Yeah, Hydra got dehydrated. I was so sad that they didn't have a scene or like a shot of the puddle that apparently was there, because I actually never saw it. I didn't turn around after the interview and look at it, so they were already cleaning it up by the time we finished. So I was kind of bummed they didn't have a nice puddle shot, but that's okay, because we went outside, and when we were doing a damage assessment afterwards, they also didn't use this footage, but it was Hydra on its stand, and you could just see drip, 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 drip. There's a constant drip for probably like 20 minutes of hydraulic fluid.
That is a while. And I also, I didn't realize, because since I'm not a builder, that's not something that I would necessarily look for, but at least per what Jake said when I had talked to him, was that was basically a very similar way that the championship went down when you beat Witch Doctor. It was kind of a similar type of thing.
It was exactly the same thing. Like, peeled a part of their own belly pan down, because the Witch Doctor is 1/4-inch aluminum belly pan, so pretty soft. But Hydra is 40,000 stick titanium, so super thin. So you could tell they're never planning on getting hit down there, which has worked out pretty well for them.
Yeah, I tried to start the term tummy tickle, but it didn't really pick up.
But yeah, I mean, it was a really great match. I was so happy to kind of see that essentially resolved, at least to me, with it being such a definitive win. So really great.
Yeah, it's pretty funny seeing people's reaction afterwards, because I think there's like 4 camps of people. There's the people that like us and that will defend us no matter what. There's the people that like us and will, look at the both sides of an argument, and vice versa for Hydra. And before the match, right? So Jake is the one talking about how this is going to prove they should have won last year, right? He's putting the onus on this match, that it matters for last year's match, and that a lot of people online also were saying that, right? This is going to prove it. This is going to prove it. And then as soon as we win the match and it doesn't go the way they want, then they're like, oh, well, this doesn't prove shit. And it's just like, okay, well, I agree with that assessment, right? It doesn't actually change last year's match, but you can't have it both ways, right? If Hydra wins that match, it doesn't prove it either. So it's pretty funny, in all seriousness, but that's just how it goes. That's how the internet is, and you just gotta move on.
That is very true about the internet. So yeah, but it, I was glad to see it end up the way that it did, and you'll be able to kind of move on from that. Now switching direction, let's kind of go to things with Blip, because we haven't talked through the beginning part of the season and kind of how things led up to the Blip Tantrum fight that everybody was waiting for. But Aren, out of the gate, the first match that you get with Blip is Endgame. Like, if you want to win a giant nut, you always have to suspect at some point you're going to fight them. And it's a tough draw. I mean, there's obviously ways to beat them. We've seen that this season, but it's still a very difficult match no matter how you square it up.
Yeah, I would say probably one of my most interesting, like, how I was feeling inside moments during the entire season was when we were lined up to fight Endgame. We watched the huge Shatter fight happen. So it was like, so we gotta face that. And they just wrecked Shatter. After we face that, oh boy, it's a fun one. Yeah, on the one hand, like, being given the schedule we did, I take as an honor, as far as like they're putting us up against robots that are our level, apparently. So thumbs up. Like, I'll take the street cred. And if you pull it off, you pull it off. If not, like, we're 0-2 going into Tantrum Blip fight, but those were not layover wins for the opponent. And in the case of the endgame fight, like, we didn't get any flips in, which I'm sad about. But we broke their weapon with our face. Like, Nick was nice enough to, after the fight and they took their robot apart, they exploded their weapon bearings by hitting our robot hard enough. And Blip was fully functional at the end of the fight, minus its hoop was set. The outer armor hoop was bent and beat up, and all the piano keys were gone. But all the, like, the drivetrain, the flipper, etc., was all okay. So I'm like, small victory. But yeah, no, they're a hardcore crew to face. And then yeah, it was nice having some heads up with how they did the fights this year, for facing Huge later. So we had more time to actually finish building our Huge plan.
Yes. And
Yeah.
speaking of which, that plan did not include a cow catcher. So I really wasn't sure how that match was going to go. Because Huge is a very interesting robot to face, and the size difference between Huge and Blip obviously is pretty drastic. So I wondered if you'd be able to get around them and stuff like that. They wouldn't be able to hit you. You did surprise, like, Blip did better than I expected. I mean, like, well, you kind of got, in like, there.
Going into the fight, we were planning on, like, we're just gonna have to stop the weapon with our face. Like, that's gonna have to happen. I can't avoid it the whole time. But then, like, halfway through the fight, I'm like, I totally could have avoided this the whole time. Because the one data point I had was them against Shatter, and Shatter is not, like, yes, it could move sideways, but it is not the fastest thing on the block. So I took a bunch of hits that I didn't need to take. We ended up having one wire get cut inside, and it killed the motor on the flywheel, so we couldn't flip anymore. And that ended up with, like, the scoring matrix. I like it a lot, because it means we can go into a match with this just analytical strategy, and it's be controlling, be more aggressive, which are not that hard to do against Huge. And then I just gave them, like, they should have been damaged 3-2 at least. So if we're fully functional at the end of the match, the most they can win. So it would have been a 6-5 match, but our flipper was dead, so it flipped one, and it's a 6-5 match the other way. So all credit to them. I'm happy with how our strategy did. Yeah, like, it was a fun match, and, like, we're there to fight robots, so
yes,
we'll,
exactly.
We'll fight any robot there, including our own.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, did that match take you by surprise at all? Because obviously you had seen how they fought against Shatter, but I mean, this season in general, Huge looks like a very different robot. It is doing very well. So I'm sure, like, seeing their first match, that kind of gave you an indication of what you might be in for.
And yeah, and I'm super happy with how well Blip took the hits for what it was. But like they've just been dialing in the same robot for years, and well, it's not like they improve it. They doubled the motors last year and then figure out more gremlins, etc. But I did have, if you have Jonathan on later, ask him what damage happened in the Blip fight, because it was not 0 inside a huge. There's a lot of sad things. So it's like, all right, we at least did something to the weird shaped thing we could barely touch. So.
Yes, I will definitely be having Jonathan on. And literally at filming, I was like, you are coming on the show at some point because we have some things to discuss. So I'll definitely ask him about that. Now, for the Tantrum Blip fight, you know, obviously, I really think that the schedule makers did such what I would call magical things with the fights this year. You know, there are so many fights on the schedule that are ones that I think fans would really want to see. And this was definitely one of those, because you have just two beautifully engineered robots, you know, that I love, and, you know, going up against each other. And like, even though they're both, you know, like Aaron, you designed them both, but they're so different at the same time.
Team designed them both.
Well, yes, that is true. That is true. It's a team effort. But I mean, I thought that it was a really great match. I'm sure that the fire was unexpected. But
Alex pointed that out at one, I think it was one of the recent calls. Like the fact the fire happened in Tantrum makes us freaked out as well, because Blip is doing has the exact same setup. So if we don't know why that happened to Tantrum, it can happen to Blip at any point in time. So it's like,
yep.
Not happy.
Yeah, I think it was a team loss when we saw that fight. I mean, it's super awesome to see your robots in the arena, and it's super awesome to see your robots as a main event. And it's like quadruple awesome to have two of your own robots as main events. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. And it's interesting because like I feel like there's definitely a lot more pressure to put on a good show, for fear of like, you know, just people thinking something's fishy, making sure that like,
and that's like
we're doing something for the first time too. And so like the production obviously trusts us to try to do that. And so us seeing that fire is like a big, you know, bummer for all of us, because of not only was it, you know, not as good of a show as we could have put on, but also like we were saying, it's the same hardware in both robots. This is a commonality issue that we now have to resolve, and like it was actually a big bummer having that fire. But that's how it goes. That's how BattleBots goes, right? If you look at how a fight was compared to the average fight, it's probably average or slightly above average, but it still was like a huge bummer to come out of that one and be like, oh, what could have been.
And well, the other, like also Blip's weapon operator is usually Brian Culver. He was at his dad's wedding in Hawaii. So other team member, Will Stanley, stepped in, but you could see him during the thing just out loud, flywheel on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just counting loudly. So I can hear him. 2, like Blip does have the annoying thing of if the flywheel's turned on, it does wheelies if you turn to the right. And it's like step 1, outmaneuver Tantrum. Okay, the flywheel's off. But that also meant I had to pin Tantrum enough to spin up the flywheel to actually launch him. And some people are like, oh, you're pulling punches. I'm like, I'm just waiting to throw a bigger punch. Come on. Like, it's a funny one seeing what the internet's taken from that one.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that.
If we wanted to have a fire, we would not have had like the $500 plus another probably $1,000 of our team's time speed controller go up in flames. Like that's not hot. Not happy.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of people were asking about that. They're like, you know, why isn't Blip flipping more and, you know, stuff like that. But I mean, now that you explained that, that makes complete sense why it was happening that way.
Yeah, it's like I would like to try outmaneuvering the opponent. Okay, that means not doing wheelies. But that means when you do get in the spot for a flip, you can't flip because the flywheel's off. So it's like, yeah, a systemically annoying thing.
Yeah,
you learn, always learning.
That is true. That is true. You know, and I will say though, because like you mentioned about like, you know, the whole team before, that's one of the things that I really loved, you know, after the match, making a point that like this is about the whole team and everybody's, you know, having input on this and everybody's working together. And I think that's so important to emphasize that, because it really isn't just about one person. You know, everybody has something that they're bringing that's making your team successful.
Also, I failed. There were teammates that weren't on the stage at that point because they weren't there. So I almost got it.
Yeah,
But
and
it's
also as a result of that, like you mentioned, I think we were so frustrated by that freak fire that we never expected. One of our teammates, Brian, is actually working on making completely custom ESCs that we're hoping will avoid all those issues forever. I think I mentioned this after, gosh, was it Minotaur? One of the fights, I think, where it was like, yeah, it sucks we made that mistake. Better to make it now than any other time. We'll go back, figure out what happened, and make sure it never happens again. Like, it's that process to us is very cyclical. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, like, you know, after that fight, you know, and like obviously we can kind of talk about peripherally, you both had one fight left after that, you know, for Tantrum, Whiplash, and for Blip, Banshee. But both teams having it, you know, not the record that you probably want, but I mean the fact is that you both teams have had very quality opponents that are difficult. And you know, to me, I think that that is as important to look at as just the record itself. So you know, for you all as a team collectively, how did you strategize to, you know, kind of make sure that the final matches of the season would, you know, go in your favor?
Oh, it was an interesting one for Blip. Like they said, like it saved our season. And like, yes, if Blip would have gotten beat, I don't think it would have made a tourney. If with like if we beat Banshee, like I don't know if that win is enough. But it's like you got beat, you got beat. That's how it goes. So that was not too crazy as far as the mental side of that. We've never been in bounty tournaments. Like so I was like, all right, well if we get knocked out, we can go do bounties. So like everything's okay there. But going into the last fights, I would say I was happy to be facing Banshee, who at least even if we lose, we don't get hurt very much as far as another flipper. But yeah, we also take it as a bit of a Ginger's comment earlier for figure out stuff during pre-fight, like the fight nights. We experiment with some things that you'll see how they work out. But
right, yeah, and I mean you just take it one fight at a time, right? So even if you have a really tough schedule, all you really can do is just take it one fight at a time. You can't really strategize like, oh, I'm gonna put more effort into this fight or not, right? It's just all right, now we have Whiplash, and we felt pretty good going into the Whiplash fight. He's been having some issues this season, and so going into that one, we felt, hey, I think we can out control one of the best control robots. So.
that's a tall order, for sure. But
Tantrum is a control robot.
Direct quotes from Matt Vasquez after I think season 5 when Tantrum lost to Endgame and then Endgame won the finals against Whiplash. Like Matt talked to me, it's like we just can't do some of the moves you just did. Like we are not fast enough to do that. And that was Matt saying that. So like some of the confidence there is well earned for yeah, we have a shot against for out controlling Whiplash.
Well, we will see how that goes. I'm really curious though, just to get your perspective, because something that's kind of been a theme this season, and I mean, like I'm trying to put my finger on it specifically, of what, like if it's any of the changes that have been made or what have you, but a lot of the teams, because obviously Blip and Tantrum typically, are kind of like at the top of the pack. And this year we've seen a lot of robots that don't normally have the best records coming out and doing really well, and then seeing a lot of robots that are typically like undefeated or close to it having losing records. Like, is there something that you think is influencing that? Because it's just not very typical of what we see on BattleBots.
Shrinking the field from what it was before, right? 65 robots down to 50 just means that you have the best of the best. And the deviation from top, like best robots out there to the worst robot in the field is shrinking. So you're going to naturally have, like, this isn't baseball. You don't have 50 games to figure out your ranking, right? It's like closer to football where you have a lot of deviation. Sometimes your team doesn't make the playoffs. And
the other thing here, this year was the first time that they just gave us the 4 fights ahead of time. This is very much a part where they took a step towards sport and away from show on this one, I think, when they did this. Everybody I've talked to loves it. I love it with regards to just like, here's the 4 fights. But it means they can't doctor. They can't go like, oh, this personality is better, this team story arc's better. Let's make sure to give them easier fights later because that first one didn't go great. Like, so it removes a lot of that, which I think is good for the show. But it also means like you get the schedule, even if it's one from hell. Like,
yeah, and even being on the receiving end of like, it's good to have your good robots do poorly. It's a better story, in my opinion, right? Like now Tantrum and Blip are 1 and 2,
1 and 2.
and so it's like, all right. I mean, that's a good story for the TV. It sucks for us, but that's fine. You know, like we're here to fight robots and do what we, the best we can. Sometimes it doesn't work out. So
like you're right though. I mean, in a way it is compelling to see that because it's not predictable. And I think fans tend to get really excited when something happens that they're not expecting. Of course, when it's like their favorite robot that that loses a match, that's never exciting, but like it happens. And like you said, the level of competition, it just goes up every year, and that shrinking of the field, I think, really like lent itself to a lot of this. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out. I think that there's definitely going to be a lot of surprises still in store for the rest of the season, which is really exciting. And I think that, overall, all of these changes and what we're going to see play out is really good for the sport, and to kind of draw in that interest. So we'll see about that. Now, one other thing that I wanted to talk about, because I'm really excited, is that y'all are going to March Norwalk. So that's really fun. And I know I will tell you, a lot of the regular builders that, are there, month in and month out for every event are really excited. That seems reasonable is going to be there. So I just kind of want to talk about that.
So I've been to one before with competing, and then Ginger and I a couple years ago helped Jameson attend. We attended some.
I also competed in December, like 2 months ago.
But and then one of our teammates, Will, is still at WPI, so he's been competing for a few. I'm excited because there's a couple team members who don't get the sticks, don't get to have that fun at BattleBots, just with how it goes, that are coming with robots. And
as co-captain of Tantrum, world champion robot, I've never driven a robot ever. So
yeah, me neither. And I never.
You guys get to see Dutch Oven is my 3-pounder, so you'll see that at Norwalk here. Yeah, Ginger, this is your first time too, right?
Yeah, actually my boyfriend Mitch is registered, so technically our entry is under Mitchell Guillaume, if you see that, and he named it RB after an Isaac Asimov robot, I believe, Robbie or something. He was very excited about it. It's also his first combat robot, so we're designing and building that together. And I think when he filled out the form, actually he filled out first time builder, no combat robotics experience. So
sneak in the easy part of the quals.
I mean, I guess it's technically true, but I think it'll be, I don't know, maybe we'll email and
the announcers will have fun with that, just like they had fun with it.
But I'm going to show up and be like, hey, inexperienced builder here.
Yep. And then we have David Mintz, who's also coming with a robot. We have
world famous self-rider operator.
A world famous self-rider operator. So he's got some stick time, but he's got, wanted to get into the 3-pounders. And then we have Will with Tilt. And then Alec will be running, Alec Pochis will be running Shifty. And then Aaron.
I got the twerps, which is multi-bot vertical spinners that are, the plan is these are built as practice for what we're trying to bring to season 8 for multi-bot vert called the Twins. So.
I think that might be.
You heard it here first.
That might be the first
I've said in other places. This is just the most public, probably.
Yeah. Hey, exclusive news.
Yeah.
I still have to finish them, but like they look shiny. So
That's that.
yeah.
I don't know if anybody, if it will, I mean, I'm not big on zodiac stuff, but still, as a Gemini, I appreciate the twins idea.
I just like the really straightforward name.
I'm big on astrology, actually.
Yeah, then,
I'm a
then,
It is
then it should be
limited.
no surprise to you that I'm a
My
Gemini.
moon is in Gemini, so maybe, you know.
Ginger, stop talking.
That's why I like you so much, Ginger.
I'm a Gemini moon. That's like a, I don't know, Capricorn and Gemini moon is sort of a red flag, so take that as you will. I probably shouldn't tell people that.
I will definitely be watching. Even though I will not be at this Norwalk, I will be at the May Norwalk. But I'm planning on doing like a live stream during this Norwalk, so maybe I will be talking about some of your fights that day. But I'm super excited about it. Super excited about, you know, World Championship 8, whenever that may happen. And now if you're talking about another robot, that creates an additional excitement. So I may have to purchase another shirt in the future.
Yep.
Don't worry, we'll have plenty of merch.
Or two.
Or two, maybe. Yeah, and for anybody that's out there bidding on Blip and Tantrum parts, please leave the Minotaur wheel alone. Just don't bid on it.
Oh. Yep, yeah. Do check it out. We have plenty of stuff on eBay, and then by the time this goes up, we should also have the pins on the website. And me saying this out loud means that I should actually go and finish doing that. So that's true. But we have
Which
pins.
Bunny
saw,
made.
yeah, that Aren and you saw in the Blip Tantrum fight, right? We was wearing the little pin.
Oh,
We were
yeah,
all
yeah,
wearing
yeah.
Blip pins and vice versa. So those are gonna be on our web store. Bunny Soriel from Malice designed those for us. So they're super cool. The puncher slides on the Tantrum pin, and the Blip has a spring on it, so it blings.
That is awesome. Yeah, and Bunny is a fantastic designer, and Malice, like, I think seems reasonable, is a good rival for Malice in terms of really awesome merch. So
That's an honor. Just be anywhere near Bunny.
I mean, but Bunny's, like she's pretty up there with the merch. So yeah.
She's the top of there.
Now, if you add Tantrum and Blip leggings to your website, I might give you extra points. So
What about Blip Blops? We got Blip Blops.
I don't
Flip flop.
I don't really do those.
But the name is a pun. It's so good.
I know, and I appreciate it as a pun. But
somebody at May Norwalk last year, I don't think they knew I was going to be there, but came wearing Blip Blops in the audience, and it was they're in somebody having those kind of freaked me out a little. Yeah.
I approve. Yeah, awesome. Well, definitely lots of amazing things to look forward to. Everybody, if you weren't already planning on watching the March Norwalk, you need to watch it. There's going to be a ridiculous number of bots. There's going to be plenty of stuff to see. And obviously keep following seems reasonable. And one last thing I want to do, because I think Adam Wrigley has now started this tradition. Please plug your sponsors. Let everybody know who sponsors you.
We'll start off with Norwalk Havoc Robotics League. They're awesomely a sponsor, as you can see by the Christine's jersey right there. It's an organization doing awesome stuff for the sport of robot combat. We also got SolidWorks, ED Manufacturing. They're the people who will take the ridiculous part files we send them for weird fancy stuff and go, okay, and just make it. And then across the board, we have also Blue River, which is a employer of one of our team members, which is pretty solid there. And then Matician, which is another employer of two of our team members, well, three of our team members. Turns out it's good for internal company morale when you're like, hey, there's a BattleBots team competing.
Yeah, I have the list here too, Aaron. We also have Van Beber, who helps make a ton of parts for our robot, notably a lot of our armor. And then we also have Send Cut Send, which is self-explanatory, awesome, super fast, super convenient 2D manufacturing. And then we also have West Coast Products, that big truck that we bring that enables us to procrastinate. So thank you, is hugely helpful to us, allows us to transport things like a lathe.
Every other team that used our lathe, the competition, thank West Coast Products for letting us borrow the truck.
Yes. And then finally we have Lazy Gecko.
Which is a teammate, Jason Wyman in Michigan's tiny LLC that makes no money, just like Seems Reasonable LLC takes no money.
Awesome. Well, very cool. Yeah, I'm like, I really want to give everybody the opportunity to do that, because above all, this is really like a platform to celebrate combat robotics and, like, you know, further the sport. And I want to make sure that the sponsors get some love too. So
Yep, it wouldn't be happening without them. So
that is very true. Very, very true. So yeah, well, for everybody that is watching, I don't have sponsors, but I have subscribers. So thank you to all of the subscribers, you know, for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. If you haven't already subscribed, please make sure that you do so. Like the video, comment, you know, always let me know what you want out of this channel, because I'm always going to do more to give the fans and everybody what they want to see. So just keep watching, lots more to come, and keep supporting combat robotics.
Yep.
Thank you.